Yes, it is natural and necessary for the infant to develop a healthy sense of self. An infant's early experience, in an infant's early experience, it doesn't differentiate between itself, between its own body, its mother's body, and its environment. So its experience is one homogeneous mass in which it has not yet separated itself out from experience, and the infant has to begin to separate itself out as a body. It has to realize, no, I am not my mother's body. I am not my cradle. I am not the room. I am this body. This is the beginning of the neti-neti process, in which it separates neti-neti, meaning I'm not this, that the infant begins to get a sense of what it is and what it isn't. And that is absolutely necessary for the functioning of the child. But what happens in most people is that this process of differentiating ourselves out from everyone and everything else stops when we get to the stage, I am my body. What is healthy is for that process to keep going. So to begin with, the infant, and as it grows into a child, differentiates itself from its parents and its environment. It comes to the experience, I am the body. In other words, I am not the world, but I am the body. All that's necessary is for that process to keep going. And really what we do here is the continuation of that process. Everyone here, everyone in the world, almost everybody, has the sense, I am my body, I am not the world. The world is something I observe, but I, my body, observes it. So all we do here is just take the next step back. Not only am I not the world, but I am not my body. I am the awareness with which the body and the world are known. So nature initiates the neti. Are you familiar with what I mean by the neti-neti process? It means the process, I'm sure most of you know. It's a Sanskrit term meaning I'm not this, I'm not that. It's the process by which we distinguish or differentiate ourselves from everything that we are not. So nature initiates that process that separates, whereby we separate ourselves out as a body from the body, first of all, of our mother, then our parents, then our environment. But most people stop there. Most people stay with the belief and feeling, I am the body. It is I, the body, that knows or is aware of the world. So here we take the next step. It is not I, the body, that knows or is aware of the world. It is I, awareness, that knows the body and the world. So nature only takes us so far to a kind of halfway stage. I am the body. In the spiritual process, we take the next step. I am awareness. And that's what a healthy development would look like.
So within healthy development, is a sense of self, a psychological self, ever created?
Yes. To begin with, as the infant develops into a child, it is developing a sense of a psychological self, which means a self whose identity is based in its body. In other words, its sense of its self is identical to its body. That is what the separate self is, the mixture of awareness plus the body. So what happens in spiritual practice is that we separate out awareness from the limiting qualities of the body, and indeed the mind, thoughts, feelings, sensations and perceptions. We see that none of these are essential to awareness. So yes, it is necessary to grow up as a healthy adult. It is necessary first to establish a sense of self that is rooted in the body. And children that don't do this have difficulties later in life adapting to society. And very often those people we can't really bypass that process and go straight to the non-dual teaching. My experience is that people who have not developed a healthy sense of themselves as a mature adult and embark on a non-dual teaching, my experience has been that their encounter with the non-dual teaching simply destabilizes them even more than they are already. It sends them further back into a pre-egoic state rather than helping them to a post-egoic state. So it is necessary to transition from the pre-egoic condition of an infant into a regular ego whose sense of identity is based in its body and who is well adapted to its environment and its community, and to then embark on the post-egoic journey, which is what we do here.
My question really is, my knowing, my awareness is independent of the shape of the experience. I can see that. And I'm wondering, as I understand it, as they are not two, knowing is impossible to be without experience. And I'm wondering how you see that.
No, you can have knowing without experience, but you can't have experience without knowing.
Yeah,
you can have a screen without a movie, but you can't have a movie without a screen.
But how do we know? Because it is impossible for my mind to know anything which doesn't have a form.
If I were to ask you the question, are you aware?
Yeah.
What would you say?
Yes.
Describe the experience to which you referred that enabled you to say yes to my question, are you aware?
There isn't an experience for that. It's just an obvious thing.
Well, when you say it isn't an experience, you must have experienced it. Otherwise you would have answered no or I don't know to the question, am I aware? I asked you, are you aware? You paused very briefly and said yes. You must have referred to something. What did you refer to?
Well, I'm having an experience and I'm aware of that.
No, but when I asked you, are you aware? You didn't refer to your thoughts. You didn't go to the sensation of your hand on the mic. You didn't refer to the tingling at the soles of your feet. Am I aware? Pause. Yes. In that pause, you, as it were, went to the experience of being aware. In other words, you were aware of being aware. As a result of that experience, you said yes to the question, am I aware? Now, when I say you had the experience of being aware, what is it that is aware of the experience of being aware? Whatever that is, must itself have two qualities. It must be present, and it must be aware. In other words, it is awareness that is aware that there is awareness. It is being aware that is aware of being aware. It is you that is aware of yourself. Yourself is not known by some other self. So in that simple experience that you, as it were, went to, in between my question, are you aware, and your answer, yes, awareness became aware of itself. In fact, awareness is always aware of itself, but its awareness of itself is usually mixed with thoughts and feelings and perceptions. But in that brief pause, it became aware of itself by itself.
Yeah, I follow you. And still there is this, I follow you fully, but you refer to my self-awareness as an experience.
As a non-objective experience.
Yeah.
So an utterly unique experience.
Yeah.
unlike any other experience. All other experience, apart from being aware of being aware, has some objective feature or quality to it.
Yeah.
So the experience of being aware alone is an utterly unique experience. Really, we should have a different word for it. But let's say it's a non-objective experience. The only non-objective experience there is, the only experience there is that has nothing objective to it at all.
Yeah.
And therefore, because it has nothing objective to it, it cannot be found by the mind. And the mind can only know objective experience. So from the mind's point of view, it is a mystery. It is hidden. It is not known. It is hard to find. The mind has to embark on this great search to find it. But to itself, it is always known.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that. And then how is it that I get confused from the words of objective experience, for example. For me, I am that as well.
You're quite right. You have to understand that the teaching is, let's say, divided into two parts.
Yeah.
Most people feel, I, the body-mind, am aware of the world. In other words, in most people's experience, I, the body-mind, is the subject of experience, and the world is the object. So, as a first step, the teaching says, no, see that what you call your body-mind, what you think of as the subject of experience, is in fact a collection of thoughts, feelings, and sensations. These are objects of experience. They are not the subject of experience. And then we have this first great awakening. Oh, it is not I, the body-mind, that knows the world. It is I, awareness, that knows the body, mind, and world. So we're still in duality here. This is not what is traditionally referred to as awakening. It is a step, a very powerful step. Suddenly there is this recognition. What I am is that which knows or is aware of my experience. I am not any particular experience. So that's the first step. Then the next step is to the exploration of the nature of the awareness that I am. And that we discover that it is ever-present and unlimited. That is what is traditionally called enlightenment. But we are still in duality. We have still separated awareness or knowing from the objects of experience. And it is this point of view, this stage, that I am speaking from when I say there is the knowing of experience, or I am aware of thoughts and feelings, the subject awareness knowing the objects of experience. It's a halfway stage. That is why at some stage earlier I spoke of the knowing of experience, or I said all there is to experience is the knowing of it, which, as you quite rightly suggest, implies that experience is one thing, the it, and that which knows it is another thing. So you're quite right, and that's why I think earlier I said it's not even the knowing of it, as if it, experience, were one thing, and that which knows it was another. It's not the knowing of it, it's just knowing. So you're absolutely right. There is no difference. All there is to experience is knowing. So,
and all there is to me is knowing. No?
All there is, period,
Yeah.
is knowing. So in most cases, knowing or consciousness is completely lost in experience. If you were to ask an animal or an infant, or in fact most people, what does your experience consist of? They would say thoughts and feelings, sensations, perceptions, etc. So to correct this attitude, the first thing the non-dual teaching does is to separate out that which knows from that which is known. So, to begin with, consciousness is completely lost in experience. There is just experience, and that is what life is like for most people. There is just experience. So the first step is we separate out consciousness from experience, and now we say there is experience, thoughts, sensations and perceptions, and there is the knower, the subject. And then we explore the subject, and then we look again. We go back to experience and investigate our experience in the light of our new understanding. And in this case, instead of merging consciousness in experience, we merge experience in consciousness. So we start with there is only experience. In the intermediary step, there is experience and consciousness. And in the last step, there is just consciousness. Now, the understanding there is just experience and there is just consciousness look very similar. In both cases, there is just one thing. That is why in the Zen they say, to begin with, the rivers are rivers and the mountains are mountains. Experience is experience. In the halfway stage, the rivers are no longer rivers and the mountains are no longer mountains. Here we've gone back to consciousness, and then the rivers are rivers again and the mountains are mountains again. It appears to be the same statement, but they are very different. One is a pre-egoic statement, one is an egoic statement, and the other is a post-egoic statement. Ramana Maharshi said the same thing. He formulated these three different stages slightly differently. The world is an illusion. Only Brahman is real. Brahman is the world. Now, if he hadn't made the last statement, he would have, the world is an illusion, only Brahman is real. That's a halfway stage. That's still denying the world. But then he adds this third statement. The world as we normally conceive it to be, made out of dead inert stuff called matter, that world doesn't exist. It's an illusion. Only consciousness is real. But then when we look at the world again, we realize all there is to the world is consciousness. So he then collapses the distinction between consciousness and the world, or between knowing and experience. So you're right, experience and knowing are the same thing. You might say, well, why do you go to the trouble of separating them if they're always one thing? And the reason is because for most people, they are one thing already, but it is experience. Objects, thoughts, feelings, that's all there is to most people's life, is experience, thoughts, feelings. So in order to draw attention to the reality of experience, we first have to separate it out, and we then collapse the distinction again. So when I'm saying all there is to experience is the knowing of it, I'm still in the halfway stage. You've gone on to the next stage and think, well, why does he keep separating the two? They're obviously not separate. It's because I'm responding to a question in which it is appropriate to speak of them as two separate things.
Yeah, I see. Thank you. And yet in the last stage still remains for me, and maybe that's because I'm somewhere halfway, but in the last stage it still remains to me, it seemed to me that Brahman and experience, or Brahman and the world, cannot be without each other. Like Brahman, I understand that I am independent of the form of my experience.
Sorry to interrupt, but in the last stage, there is no such thing as Brahman and the world anymore. You're presuming that the two things, the Brahman and the world, still exist. No. At this third stage, there is no such thing as Brahman and the world.
Exactly. So how could Brahman be without experience? It's impossible, right? It's one.
Because from Brahman's point of view, from consciousness's point of view, whether it is modulating itself in the form of experience or not is irrelevant.
Yeah,
because all there is to its experience is itself. So consciousness has no knowledge of experience and myself. From consciousness's point of view, all it ever knows is itself. There is just itself. Now, we could we could go even beyond this third stage, because I'm calling this third stage knowing, or consciousness, or God, or Brahman. But all these words only mean something in reference to their opposites. That which knows only means something in reference to that which is known. God only has any meaning in relation to the world. But if there is nothing other than this reality that I'm calling knowing, what word are we going to use to name it? What word could we meaningfully give it? What name could we give it? We cannot give it a name, because all names refer to some limited experience.
Yeah, something in relation to something else.
Something in relation to something else, exactly. So even to call it knowing is to say one thing too much about it.
Yeah, I see.
I usually wait to the end of a weekend or a retreat to say that nothing I have said during the weekend is absolutely true. My job is to throw you back onto your own experience.
That's where I seem to be stuck, because...
So you said, I am ambitious, I have free will, I am stuck. All these questions refer to I.
Yeah.
Tell us about the I that is ambitious, that wonders whether there is free will, that feels stuck, that wants the teacher to answer, etc. Tell us about... Don't explore the ambition, the free will, the feeling of being stuck. Tell us about the I at the center of your experience.
Yeah, then I can see myself as a person.
What is it that sees yourself as a person?
The awareness that sees myself as a person.
And are you the person or the awareness, essentially? Between two thoughts and perceptions, do you have any knowledge of being a person?
No, then I'm simply aware.
So which are you most essentially? The person that you seem to be when thought and perception are present? Or the awareness that is present between two thoughts and perceptions and during all thoughts and perceptions?
I'm essentially awareness. And in real life I get... No, not. In everyday life, when I'm not paying attention, so to speak, then I'm stuck, and while not paying attention, I'm not even aware of not paying attention, so it seems. So it's places like, moments like this, that I'm focused.
But whether you are paying attention or not, whether you are focused or not, whether you are ambitious or not, whether you have free will or not, do you ever cease being awareness?
No.
Are you only awareness when you notice that you're awareness?
No, of course not. No.
Does awareness, the awareness that you are mind, whether it is being noticed by you or not?
No.
And when I say noticed by you, I imply that you are something separate from awareness that can notice awareness, but the you is awareness. In other words, awareness is sometimes losing itself in experience, that is its freedom, and it is sometimes disengaging from experience and seeming to return to itself, although of course it never really leaves itself. So just let this flow of attention, the stretching of awareness towards objective experience, and relaxation, the dissolving of attention in its source, to take place spontaneously. Just let this ebb and flow of attention take place. Don't make experience a problem. In time, there is less of a... To begin with, it's either or, objects or awareness. It's back and forth. They seem to be two mutually exclusive positions. But in time, the more we go back to awareness, when I say we go back to awareness, you understand that I mean the more awareness ceases to lose itself in its own creativity and knows itself again as it is, the more awareness does that, if we can call it something that awareness does, the more established it becomes, as it were, in itself, and the less objective experience has the capacity to veil awareness from itself. So then we find that even as we go out towards objects, those objects lose their concealing power, and they begin to shine with the awareness that is their reality. So to begin with, you do this back and forth, until in time you'll find that awareness is not just present in the background of experience, although that is where most of us find it first. But you'll begin to feel that the whole realm of your experience is pervaded by, saturated by awareness itself. In other words, we begin to discover that awareness is not just transcendent, it is immanent. It is not just to be found behind experience or prior to experience, it is to be found in the midst of experience. And then in time, even the distinction between awareness and experience begins to dissolve. And at some point there is just awareness, just knowing. Not the knowing of something, because all there is to the something is knowing. And then there's no question of back and forth. There is just the ocean of awareness modulating itself in all forms of experience. There is nowhere to go, because all you would find would be more of yourself. There is nothing to escape from, because all you would escape to would be more of yourself. So the impulse to seek certain experiences or resist certain experiences begins to diminish, apart from those that are necessary for the safety of the body or the maintenance of the body. So you begin to find yourself at peace in the midst of experience.
And what is the force of life itself then that makes me do things, say things, respond to things? Where is this all coming from?
The irrepressible impulse that is innate in awareness to manifest itself in all forms of experience. Just like it is a natural impulse for a couple to want to express the love they share in the form of a child. It is this natural impulse. It's like the desire to have a child is like giving birth to the love you feel on the inside. So the child is an expression, a manifestation of that love. It's the same. There is this same impulse, this irrepressible impulse in awareness to simply out of love, for no reason, for no practical purposes. Simply this purposeless impulse to birth the love that is on the inside of itself in the form of the world on the outside of itself, for no reason. That's why if you ask an artist, what is the purpose for the work you do? What is the purpose for all the energy, the time that you put into your work? A true artist will always answer, there's no reason. The reason could never be confined in a finite mind. Any reason that the mind came up with would always be too small. It could never truly express the impulse to create. If the finite mind could express that impulse, it wouldn't be necessary to make art.